So I'm very excited to introduce Dr. Jennifer Jenkins. So Jennifer is with the UA Southwest Center, and she's also a professor in the Department of English and in American Indian Studies. And when we saw the announcement for her presentation at CUES, it just resonated with so many of the ideas that we've been talking about all semester. And so she's going to talk about this program that she's been working on. I'm not sure I can just give the a great pronunciation, but I think it's Cadencia, a place-based learning in the Arizona borderlands. And what I think is particularly cool about it that attracted me to getting her to come is that it includes, the program includes place-based learning with local archival research. It also integrates native ways of knowing. And I also learned some really interesting things about Jennifer. She's been working for years on movies and other kinds of cultural records from the Southwest that we all maybe have seen, and looking at new ways to look at those based on their context and maybe that are maybe different from the context in which they've been presented to us. And I'm always fascinated by re-looking at things like that. So Jennifer, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Franz and Maggie, and everyone for the invitation. I'm really thrilled to be here. This presentation is a version of what I'm giving for CUES next week. So you're getting the sneak preview, sort of. So because of the tech things, I need to bring my presentation notes off of my own laptop. So bear with me. Good, thank you. So I'm really happy to be here with you to share what turns out to be two related projects. One is the CUES, and then I'm going to take just like 3 minutes at the end to tell you about the film project that Franz referred to. And I need to say, of course, that Arizona is home to 22 federally recognized Native tribes and reservations, and also that this work is funded by CUES, the Center for University Education Scholarship at the University of Arizona, and any views, findings, or recommendations hereby expressed are those of the author. So I wanted to take a good look at this landscape because I'm going to refer to it in a seating slide. This is near Patagonia, Arizona, and it's open space that was once owned by settler ranchers and has been returned to the wild through the efforts of the Borderlands Restoration Network, which convinced the settler ranchers that it would be good to have open space. And this is an area in which the jaguars actually migrate. It's a space of human and flora and fauna migration. It's also quite close to, I'm moving backwards in time, to the Ansa colonialist expedition path, and of course was occupied by ancestral cultures of the Otham and Apache folks. So kind of take a mental snapshot of that place. And can you all hear me okay? Can you just use the microphone possibly? Does it work? Does it work? Does it work?
So, oh, sorry. Okay. Okay. Is that better?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Absolutely. It's allergy season already. And yeah, so I'm a little croaky. Okay. So Querencia, what the heck is it? Right? Querencia is, according to Barry Lopez in The Rediscovery of North America, a place where one feels safe, a place from which one's strength of character is drawn, a place, where one feels at home. So I wanted to use that as the frame for my CUES proposal because I think it's really, really important for students to have a sense of grounding, yeah? And it literally is a grounding, right? Feet on the ground, grounding to a particular landscape from which one draws one's strength. I'm guided in this by the concept of the peoplehood matrix, and you may have, probably have, engaged with this during your time together in this FLC. Oh, that's a little fuzzier than I wanted it to be, but, oh, and I was going to say, if you want to take pictures of any of the slides, feel free. I don't know if that's a thing with you all, but anyway, you're welcome. So the peoplehood matrix is this wonderful sort of four hoops intersection of language, place, sacred history, and ceremony. And it's a way in which sovereignty is articulated. And all four of those things intersect with each other: language and ceremony, sacred history and place, sacred history and ceremony, place, and I got lost. But anyway, all four of them intersect in that way. And this is a wonderful piece that I would recommend to you. Tom Holm was our colleague here until about 10 years ago in American Indian Studies, and he has a second career as a novelist, and I would recommend his work to you as well. So Querencia is about space, place, and identity. And in my entire career, my entire professorial career has been spent at this institution. No matter what I've been doing, I've been investigating the relationships among space, place, and identity. And the very first course I was hired to teach as a brand new PhD was called Intercultural Perspectives, way back when. And it was exactly this, looking at how plural cultures come together to create what it is we live in this space. So I've been thinking about and with and toward these things for quite some time. So anyway, so as you know, the Arizona borderlands are a palimpsest of indigenous Spanish and settler cultures spanning at least 3,000 years. But as Maggie quite rightly noted, pandemic isolation and the explosion of digital information has led to increased screen-based learning. And place-based learning aims to immerse students in my case, local heritage landscapes and spaces. Yeah. And this is all students, but I think it has a particular resonance for students from this place. And I'll talk about why in a moment. Okay, so PACE, this is the book that's kind of guiding our thinking in the CUES project, Navigating Place-Based Learning, Mapping for a Better World. And I can put a digital copy in the D2L if that's useful. I can also pop my Querencia proposal in there if that's useful as well. Happy to do that. It's got all the footnotes in it, so they aren't here. Anyway, this is a book by two geographers thinking about immersive studies for students, particularly about geography, okay? And they base their work on the immersive practices of study abroad, which I think we're all, at least nominally familiar with, right? It's experiential pedagogy. You put your feet on the ground in, wherever it is you're going, Guadalajara or Italy or, wherever it is. One of the principles of study abroad is eyes, ears, and hearts open, right? To be open to what you're going to experience as you leave your comfort zone. I should have added mouths, but that never quite comes out right. I always tell my students, enter a new culture with your mouth open, but I don't mean talking, I mean eating, right? You need to try new foods because food is community. And so leaving one's comfort zone means seeing, hearing, experiencing and eating things that you might not be that familiar with. Langren and DeWitt talk a lot about how this kind of immersion raises students' awareness of place, of their own place and identity in the world, and it makes them a little more interested in what we used to call global citizenship. And also, there's quite a bit of documentation on how this kind of immersive practice or immersive pedagogy has a positive impact on retention and graduation rates. And there have been several studies, and the footnotes are in the Querencia proposal, on retention and graduation rates, particularly for students at minority serving institutions. And so this is, study abroad. So kids from, the Navajo Reservation go to England or, Russia or wherever. And regardless of where they go, the impact on wanting to continue what they're doing is notable and what's that word? Documentable. Okay. So my project is kind of the opposite of that in a way, or at least it's adjacent. My feeling is it's a crime if our students graduate and haven't left our square mile or maybe urban Tucson, that they haven't been to see this incredible place where we live. So our project is not study abroad, it's study anear, which is a little cute, but you get the point, right? So it honors the history, geography, cultures, arts, and peoples of this place. It builds affinity for this place, for home places, for home communities, and valorizes local heritage and intergenerational knowledges. And that means that first-generation students like me, who come from heritage communities around the state, see the value of these places acknowledged by the larger academic community. I mean, we're all familiar with the power of that. There is an archival component to this. We look at archival materials and, the power of people seeing things from their communities in the archive valorized as important primary sources, right, is in some ways immeasurable. And so I think in terms of your purposes, our purposes, because I belong now to the FLC, it's about finding ways to help our students find familiarity and see that they are represented in this place, the institution, what the institution values, right? Whether that's primary sources, whether it's primary landscapes, it's how we talk about what we do. It needs to be inclusive. And again, speaking as a first generation college student, you get on this huge campus. It was even huge when I was a freshman, or at least to me it was. And you feel like, everybody else belongs and you don't, right? And people from rural and regional and heritage communities may feel that even more. So I'm preaching to the choir here, right? Seeing relatable things that connect to home and identity and space of place is super, super important. And I think that this project, I hope that it will do that. The goals in terms of cues, because it's about the scholarship of teaching and learning, those goals are to measure, the impact that this kind of immersion has on students' choices about staying here after graduation. Does it make a difference? Do they want to adapt their major minor to studying the local or the locale, right? So these are the topics that we're looking at chronologically. We start far back and as immediately as yesterday with Indigenous Arizona. We go to Hohokam sites and Atam sites and look at that conversation. We deal with the Spanish entrada through the mission system, but also through Mission Garden, where the hybridity of the ecosystem is acknowledged. And right behind or across the street from Mission Garden is are the volcanoes and the trincheras that the Atam and Hohokam used as rainwater catchment basins well before the Spanish ever came here. So, and then there's Tumamoc and, the whole presence up there. Okay, so there. And then settler cultures, which are not limited to Anglo or Spanish, right? I mean, we have Black and Asian settlers, and you may know Fort Lowell was a cavalry, a post-Civil War cavalry fort. There's also a Hohokam site there. Camp Naco is, and you may not know about Camp Naco, it'll be on the map very, very soon, but it was a Buffalo Soldier camp that was, well, the Buffalo Soldiers also came after the Civil War to this region, and they were at Fort Huachuca, except it was segregated, so they were at Camp Naco, right? You can see the border wall from Camp Naco. It's being restored through a Mellon grant, and there's a lot of activity going on down there, including the Buffalo Soldier reenactment group that are actually folks who were in the military in their lifetimes here in the 21st century, who have researched and want to represent the lives and activities of the Buffalo Soldiers. And then Tombstone, which had a huge Asian comparatively huge Asian population. And that's a pretty interesting history. Students are always startled to discover that the newspapers around the turn of the 19th into the 20th century were fretting about the illegal alien, and they called it that, and worse, illegal alien issue. And what they were concerned about was Chinese folks coming across from Mexico to the US for all the same reasons that people have fretted about migration, as a threat to their dominance, but a focus of a different population. Okay, and then ecology and adaptation, the Desert Lab on Tumamoc, the San Javier Farm, Borderlands Restoration Network in Patagonia that I mentioned, and addressing borders and frontiers, both the political border at Nogales and I don't have an adjective for this, border at the Titan Missile Museum. I belong to a working group on the nuclear borderlands, and so we're integrating some of that into this project. Okay, so a sample course module, this is could be any of those, but this is one. So we look at the Hohokam presence. We read from The Short Swift Time of Gods on Earth, which is an as told to recounting of the by Atam Akimel folks, recounting what they know of their Hohokam history. Reading down through, recorded by Julian Hayden at the Snaketown Dig in the 1930s, and then transcribed and annotated by Donald Barr, an anthropologist at ASU in the 1990s. And so then visits to University Ruin, which, if you don't know, is kind of in the middle of a subdivision, an old subdivision, a mid-century modern subdivision on the east side of Tucson, but the university owns it, and it's a a wonderful site. It has a platform mound, and you can see evidence of pit houses and retaining walls and so forth. Casa Grande is, you know what Casa Grande is, and is a really great teaching site. Students can't believe that it's there, and it's really, when I first started teaching this material, it was in the middle of a pretty open space with a lot of cotton. So you can talk about Pima cotton and Hohokam cotton and dry farming and so forth. Now there's a Walmart across the street from it. And that particular abomination is also something useful to discuss as the evolution of something. And then Halagamki, the Akimelatam Museum in Chandler, because that's all sort of in that direction. There's another version of this where we go sort of west out to the big reservation here and see the Tohono O'odham Cultural Center. So it just kind of depends on where the road takes us. And then the resources are the archival resources. The Salt River Project Photo Archive has these wonderful aerial photos of the canal system in the greater Phoenix Valley, and those canals, which of course they use for the Salt River Project and CAP water, were dug by the Hohokam. They predate Anglo presence. They predate Spanish presence. You know, they are their own thing. And these are the people who figured out using water appropriately and effectively. Is something, editorial comment, completely ignored by Phoenix for the last almost 100 years. And then Julian Hayden's photographs over at U of A Special Collections document the dig at Snaketown, which was a very extensive Hohokam settlement, sort of halfway between here and Phoenix. It's in sort of lower Maricopa County, maybe it's in upper Pinal County. Anyway, wonderful photographs. And of course, the workers there were largely from the, excuse me, Gila River Indian community. And Julian, whom I was privileged to know very late in his life, learned to speak Atam from these folks. And, you know, he was a good model, I think, in many ways. He was not an academic archaeologist. He was what they now call a contract archaeologist, but he wanted to go in through the people, with the people, rather than with the bulldozer. Or backhoe, I should say. Okay, so that's that project. And I just want to quickly share with you the Tribe Sourcing Southwest Film Project, which predates the Querencia project. This is an NEH-funded initiative to deal with mid-century social studies films about Indigenous peoples by returning to home communities and recording new narrations from cultural insiders. So the backstory on this is that we were given 450 plus films about Native peoples of the Americas, and they just came as films with no context. And so that's lovely. But, and as a film historian, that's a real bonanza. But the narrations on these are really, as I like to say, you know, the visuals are from the golden age of 16mm Kodachrome. They are gorgeous. The audio tracks are from the dark age of the 1950s and 40s, and casually use a lot of terms that we would smack people for using if we heard them today. No, we wouldn't literally smack them, but they're not appropriate. They're disrespectful. And so the project is to go take the films back to the communities where they were made and invite Indigenous community members to record narrations. So what I wanted to share with you, that's the website, tribesourcingfilm.org. It's so we got the NEH grant for 50 films, and we decided to start with our closest neighbors and invite them to record narrations. So I'll show you one from, let's see. Yeah. So there are instructions on how to use this, and I just want to show you this one. There's a lot of metadata down the side, as you see there, and keywords and so forth. We have this lovely counter narration from Cheyenne Barefoot, who is from the Apache culture. She grew up off reservation, and so she was interested in looking at this film to learn more about her family's background. And so real quickly, how you use this, you start the film, you kill the original narration, and you start the voiceover. And we won't be able to hear it because I blithely told the tech person that we don't need sound. But you can go there yourself. It's pretty straightforward. It's kind of like putting on the director, remember DVDs? So when you could put on the director narration for the, yeah, it's like that. And we decided not to scrub the original narration because it's important to put the two in conversation, right? Especially for younger people, digital natives, as they say, and generation streaming. They don't necessarily know what all the fuss is about, that, why people are so uptight. So they need to hear that. Well, Cheyenne's, and I invite you to see this and listen. Cheyenne's narration is a call to action, frankly, and really quite a treat. So how do I go back to my presentation? Here it is. Yeah, okay. And then I just wanted to, I don't know how to make that big. Yes, I do. There we go. Okay. So ultimately then, my message is wisdom sits in places, that lovely title from Keith Basso's work amongst the Western Apache. That invokes all four of the peoplehood matrix. And then thanks to my sisters, my teachers, Rhiannon Sorrell and Christine Ami at Dinek College. You can reach me, and please do, at my email. And thank you for your time and attention. I'm happy to take any questions you want. Or not. Maggie?
Interested in the connection when you take students and engage them in this place-based learning, especially when it's not their place.
Right.
So they're sort of outsiders coming in. How does that also translate or transfer for them back to their home communities? For students that are out of state or out of this region, I imagine that there can be a pretty profound transfer of that knowledge and that valorization of local history that they could then discover at their own home.
Well, that's a great question. And I think you know, if past experience is any indication of future potential, my plan is to ask all students to, you know, write reflections and think about how they're going to take this back home. My brilliant colleague, Jeff Bannister in the Southwest Center, is a geographer, and he has an assignment where he asks students to write an email to someone about what they saw and experienced and connect it to their own situation or context. I hadn't thought about doing that before, but I think that's really brilliant. The other thing is I usually say, depending on which semester, you know, when you go home for Thanksgiving or when you go home for spring break, check out what's at the local library, right? You might have noticed I have a library science degree. You know, check out what's at the local library that relates. And of course they can do that online, but I'm a big believer in, you know, get your feet in the door. Yeah, please.
So I thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
I just want to know what your learning objectives were at the beginning, but then in response to my question regarding what you can do.
Mm-hmm.
I used to work in the College of Public Health in the previous years, and we did experience face-to-face learning for our masters and our doctoral students in health sciences. And in order for our students to learn about public health, we need to see public health in the community.
Absolutely.
Because they learn about the theories, interventions. And so we developed service learning institutes.
Mm-hmm.
And so our College of Public Health has a rural one, an urban one, an international global one here in Tucson, and the one I took over was the one in the rural Southwest, focusing on maternal child health.
Mm-hmm.
And so for a week, I would take about 10 students up to northern Arizona and do a tour all the places, starting from Flagstaff to the city, to Hopi, to Navajo, and to some of my home communities where I grew up, to learn from communities about what health means to them, and to see how communities are developing innovative ways that they're incorporating Navajo philosophy of wellness or Hopi concepts of wellness within their health programs, using existing federal funds and guidelines and how they're able to be creative, but also to see, to actually spend at least one night in a community. So we actually had them live with a community member way out in the middle of nowhere, so they could see and feel and experience, again, using all the different senses like we talked about, of living in a very rural place where there's no running water, no electricity, and access to food. And then see from their perspective, when we're developing interventions and working on healthcare services, then you can see the challenges of how it takes 2 hours to go to a grocery store, or an hour maybe to go seek healthcare, and that there's no Starbucks out there.
Or Wi-Fi, right?
Or Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
So that was a lot of challenges for our students. A lot of them were urban and from other states. And so they got to see real clearly how communities will live and work and manage to survive, and the beauty of living in an area to be so connected to land. And so we did a lot of reflections. So after every day, we would have a reflection and ask them what they thought. They'd write down on it, and at the end, they actually had to write a paper about their experiences. But also to, when they come visit their communities, they were expected to bring a gift to the host as a way to respect their welcoming into the community. So that was, I think, a lot of really transformative for a lot of our students, because it was their first time being in a rural area in Arizona, to see Indigenous folks, and also building that camaraderie among the students. But for a lot of our students also, they changed their majors into public health and working in programs that work directly with folks versus going the clinical route. So I think there's a lot of programs that do that here at the U of A. So I just want to know what your learning objectives were here for this.
That's a really, really good question. So we don't have defined learning objectives. We have outcomes, which are a little more quantitative. And I'm not that kind of social scientist. I'm on the humanities side, sorry. But we're going to measure students' awareness of the area before they take the class and then measure it again at the end. I think that, you know, in terms of what you were talking about, I have so many things popping around in my head right now, but one of the questions is, you know, having taken this course, do you want to change your major? Do you want to incorporate Southwest Studies or something else? Sorry, related to it into your degree path? Do you want to change your focus? All of those things are questions. I don't think it's a, I mean, that's not a learning objective because it's not my job to tell them what to major in, but to kind of give them exposure to the options. That's part of it. I will say for outcomes, there's, of course, the reflections. Our summative project is pretty open because I have a film background. I am really open to moving image outputs so they can make a film. Has to be longer than a TikTok, you know. They could. I actually have a grad student who has her students doing Instagram posts of place, you know, and talking about place. And then you can stitch those together for a longer piece. But my teaching department is English. And so, of course, we're kind of writing focused. And I'm pretty open to what they can do. You know, they can obviously write a research-based paper, but they can also do creative critical assignments. And I think that the transformative piece is both critical thinking and just plain sort of leading with the heart and how we put those two together so that they, you know, yeah, understand an unfamiliar place here, and then you process it. You don't go in with this idea of what it's going to be and shut this off. No. But the one thing I was thinking about when you were talking about homestays was one of my favorite things to do is get students outside at night. I need to finish that sentence. And have them look up, because especially kids from the East have no idea what that sky is like. And up on the Navajo Nation where you can see, I mean, you can here too sometimes, but see the Milky Way. And then when they're all sort of awestruck, say, okay, now, Indigenous peoples don't connect the dots between the stars to make Greek and Roman constellations. It's different. And, you know, their heads just explode. So, and then they can write about that. I mean, there's all sorts of star mapping, there's food mapping, there's story mapping, all those kinds of things. So thank you for the question. Other, I think you had something.
I have a very logistical question. I was wondering about the course that you're developing.
Mm-hmm.
What's the duration, the time span? Is this a typical semester? Is it a pre-session? How do you do on the field trips?
What level is?
Can I join?
Yeah, right.
Is it a general education course?
Not yet.
Okay.
So I think it's criminal if students graduate without having left the campus, but I also think it's a serious identity problem at this institution, and I say this with love, if they can graduate without having learned about this place. You know, in my opinion, there ought to be a requirement beyond those, you know, why we go to football games classes. Sorry, no offense. You know, they don't need to know about Wilbur and Wilma. They need to know about the cultures that surround them. So the logistics. This is an interesting one. So it should be the 16-week. the 5 toe boy, which can shift and change. The idea is a couple of weeks of classroom and archive, and then the field trip. And then a couple more weeks of classroom and archive, and then the field trip. One model that somebody floated was 7-week online. Yeah, you see the problem, right? I'm like, no. And well, no, it's really good. Students can get 2 courses in the space of the semester. And I'm like, place-based learning is not this. Place-based learning is put your feet on the ground. So another idea was to do sort of a field school during spring break. That's a hard sell to undergrads. And this is designed for undergrads, to answer your question. Grad students, I think it would be less of a hard sell. And there's certainly a long tradition with Southwest Center faculty of taking students during spring break across the border. I'm not sure I would do that, but I would take them close. And, that's a different enterprise, I think. What I'm discovering, and actually tomorrow I am taking my graduate class, Studies in Southwest Literatures. We're going out to Mission San Javier to read the building as a text. I have to take them during class time because they have very full and busy lives. And back in the day, dare I say it, in the 20th century, I used to just say, okay, we're going such and such a place on Saturday and, show up. And they did. Lots of students don't drive, I discovered. And I am not going to let them take Ubers to the border, to the Mission, to Tubac. No, that's not happening. To Northern Arizona, no. So that involves university vans. I'm lucky both ways. I have 11 students in my graduate class, which for us is a big enrollment, and they also fit in one van. So that's a great thing. And I'm very excited to take them out to that sacred precinct and introduce them to the idea of reading a building, which this is English majors. They're like, no, book. So that'll be fun. But many of them don't really have a sense of where San Javier is, even though they go to school here. And some of them went to college here and now are graduate students. And some of them don't drive. I mean, this really is, as you were saying, Generation COVID. And so the nimbleness of adjusting to that with different expectations of mobility is part of the challenge, frankly, of this project. But it's a great thing. I'm so happy to be doing it. And I'm so grateful to CUES for giving me the opportunity, because these are problems kind of I didn't know existed. I mean, they're not problems, they're opportunities, right? But this gives me a chance to think around and with and for them. Yeah, please.
I also have a background in place-based learning, and I'm just really excited to learn about this, so thank you. And also, this is all like, this feels like a selfish question. I'm an ethicist, and I think a lot about the ethics of cultivating just relationship between students and other communities. And it's something, I took students to my ancestral homeland in Puerto Rico, and it's something that weighs heavily on me.
Yeah.
How do you, in this program, think about that? And how do you ensure that students share that commitment when they're in these places that aren't yet theirs, or maybe that, they're visiting?
Yeah, I don't think you can ensure it, frankly. I mean, we can't ensure, I know, you can't ensure ethical behavior, right? But you can lay the groundwork, and that's why there are these weeks in the classroom, right? We model ethical behavior. I talk a lot about relationship building and how essential that is, that you know, before you can enter a community, you need to reach out to people. Yes, if you go, you need to bring a gift, of course. I grew up in Japan where you don't move 20 feet without giving somebody a gift, right? It just seems like good behavior, right? And it's not necessarily a gift card. It needs to be something meaningful. Gift cards are meaningful in their own way, but you know, something from the heart. Again, something you made, something you brought from your home space. Yeah. So one of the things, you know, I said Rhiannon and Christine are my sisters and my teachers. And I was up there in the wintertime a couple of years ago after COVID and when things opened up again. And I said, okay, so we're going to be meeting some folks and what do I need to bring? And I was expecting, you know, coffee or I don't know what, fresh vegetables, because I always pick up something in Flagstaff before I go out there. No, socks and beanies. Okay, I can do that, you know. Wasn't on my radar, but of course, you know, the elders need warm socks and it turns out they love beanies. So, great. I love beanies and socks. You know, we have that in common. So there's that. Ensuring ethical behavior, I think, oh my gosh. So we did a summer institute for K-12 teachers a couple years ago out of the Southwest Center, funded by the NEH. And it's in a program called Landmarks of American History and Culture. And usually their landmarks are things like Monticello or the New York Public Library. You know, and we said, Arizona Sonora Borderlands, a little bit bigger. So we had all these folks out here and we went to the mission and we were having lunch at Sanavir Farm and the community were so lovely, made lunch, talked to us and so forth, but they said, please no filming. This one woman was filming and several of the course leaders went to her and said, you can't do this. Well, it's for my Native students at home. Well, no, you didn't ask permission ahead of time. This is not okay. You cannot do this. Thank you for coming. And she was quite assertive. And we said, no, you absolutely cannot do that. And we need to see that you have erased that from your phone. And she left the program. I mean, sometimes that's probably an extreme example. You know, undergrads, you can sort of be a little more forceful ahead of time with. But you're right, you can't teach ethical behavior. You can hope to inspire it. Yeah? Yeah. Other questions? Well, thank you for your time and attention. And if I got something wrong and you didn't call me out here, that's very kind of you. But please email me and you know, tell me, because I'm a person and I get things wrong all the time. So anyway, if you don't know this book, it is really lovely. And it's such a lovely title. I just love that, right? I mean, that's the essence. Keith was guided by his Western Apache teachers and you know, it is the essence of place-based learning, but it's also sort of the essence of recognizing the value of connection to home communities. Yeah. So thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.